Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Micro, small and medium enterprises are the main power behind the growth of the economy of any country. Many countries paid special attention to that from form of a parallel economy to achieve an economic leap and also unprecedented economic growth. And recently, the Egyptian government began preparing a draft law for the micro, small and medium enterprises that would be discussed by the House of Representatives in its round, which is due to begin next month. Now, to shed more light on this issue, we're very much delighted to have with us here in the studio Mr. Hany Abou-El-Fotouh, the economic expert, to tell us more about the importance of macro and small enterprises. Good morning to you, Mr.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Hany. Mr. Hany, to start with, can you please shed light on the draft law of the SMEs?
First, thank you very much indeed for inviting me here today. The draft law, the long-awaited draft law, was presented early this month to the Parliament for discussion. The SME committee in the Parliament will pursue the discussion about the draft law, and simultaneously community-based dialogue will be initiated to discuss the draft law. This draft law indeed included several incentives for the SME sectors, the micro and SME sector, and it also included a bunch of incentives to the grey economy, or in other words, the underground economy, which yet to be integrated into the formal economy. Several incentives, not only the tax-related incentives, but other incentives that deal with getting rid of the red tapes and simplifying the procedures to registering the new companies from the underground economy. This is very important because we understand that the large size of the grey economy has yet to be integrated in order to boost the economy, in order to allow the government to know exactly the size of the business activities in the country and plan in the right way.
Yes. Mr. Hany, the micro, small and medium enterprises have a role in boosting the economy, and you just described it as underground economy. Would you tell us more about the importance of underground economy of any country?
The grey economy, or the underground economy, if we may call this term correctly, these are the activities which are not registered in the official records of the country, of any country. It is not peculiar, this phenomenon is not peculiar to the developing countries, but also it exists in some way or another even in developed countries. It is estimated that nearly 40% of the business activities in the Middle East are not registered in any way or in a way or another. So they are not accounted in the GDP of the country. So it's very important for any country to integrate this sector into the formal economy in order to plan in the right way.
Yes, indeed. So what about the case here in Egypt? How do you see the role of the SMEs in boosting the economy? And how do you see the role here played by the government in order to boost the SMEs?
The SME sector in Egypt is very huge. Indeed, it is estimated nearly to be in the range of 80 to 85% of all business activities. They fall under the definition of SME. Despite there was no a formal or an accurate definition of what is a small or what is a medium entity, the new draft law has established a more precise definition for this sector. The SME globally is the driving force for making a sustainable development in any country. So if we are speaking about 80 to 85% of business activities, they fall under this of the SME category. So this means that the government must pay more attention and focus the efforts to boost this sector in order to help them to grow and to develop the economy.
Mm. And sir, what about the incentives that the new draft law would offer to youth for them to be encouraged to establish their own business and their own projects?
There are several types of incentives under the draft law, primarily the tax incentives. The tax incentives provided a more simple tax table and tax calculation scheme as opposed to the previous or the historical phenomena of arbitrary judgment on the amount of taxes, something which defeated many businesses to register in the formal economy. So the new draft law provided a more simple, straightforward tax incentive. It also provided more incentives to the unregistered entities to start registering and providing them with a grace period of 3 years to complete the registrations and other formalities. Meanwhile, when they start registering in the formal economy, they will benefit from getting finance from financial institutions and other benefits that are provided generally to registered entities. Also, the new draft law provided incentives in terms of technical assistance to the entrepreneurs, and I think there are a lot of incentives. The time may not be enough to elaborate more on this issue.
Yes. So to what extent the different financial entities provide the needed financial support to establish the SMEs?
SMEs, generally speaking, get finance from the banking sector and non-banking sector. The banking sectors, the regular banking credit facilities are granted to the SME sector currently through the initiative provided by Central Bank in year 2016 for 4 years, and it's about to end by end of next year. This initiative for the SME by the banking sector is concerned with providing nearly 200 billion pounds in terms of finance, lowered interest rate for the small and medium enterprises, reducing great credit facilities. If we speak about the non-banking financial institutions, there are the microfinance companies which are supervised by the Financial Supervisory Authority. They provide also finance to the micro sector, small loans and facilities. Also, there are other civil society organizations which are allowed to provide finance for the microfinance sector, the small, the tiny, the very small business entities.
Yes. Mr. Hany, how do you see the keenness of the government on encouraging youth to establish their own business and their own enterprises?
Over the last 20 years or so, many countries around the world realize that creating jobs for the youth is very important for the stability and for the growth of any economy. In Egypt also, we realize that this is crucial, that we provide jobs, not only providing jobs, but enabling the private sector to create jobs for the young people and entrepreneurs. Instead of asking the college graduates, university graduates to seek regular jobs in the employment market, the government would encourage them to establish their own businesses. This is typically what the government has been doing or encouraging in different ways over the last 20 years or so. So in order to boost the sustainable growth, it is very crucial that the government encourage young entrepreneurs to have their own businesses and provide them not only with finance but also with technical assistance and training and other assistance needed to create their businesses in the right way.
Sir, how do you see the role of the banks here in encouraging the youth to establish their own projects?
Banks have very important role in supporting the SME sector, and in the last few years, several banks have established SME units. These are different in many ways than the regular credit units in traditional banks. They have their own procedures designed, tailored to cater for the SME businesses. And I recall that in the 60s, the National Bank of Egypt was the first bank to provide financial assistance or financial products to the young entrepreneurs by providing them a loan amounting to 1,000 Egyptian pounds to build their own businesses. At that time in the 60s, 1,000 pounds was a reasonable amount to start a business. Similarly here, the banking sector now is encouraged, or it actually has a regulation to allocate up to 20% of its lending portfolio to SME sector as part of the central bank initiative to boost the sector, and allocating nearly 200 billion pounds to this initiative at a reduced rate.
Sir, the central bank decided to reduce the profit on SMEs. So how do you see this decision? How do you read it? And what would be the impact of such decision on young entrepreneurs?
The recent cut of the basic interest rate, as mandated by the central bank last week, was very important and came at the right time to boost the economy and encourage more borrowing from the banking institutions in order to flourish the market. I would say that the central bank initiative caters primarily for the SME business activities in the industrial sector, in developing even the small industrial projects, but the service sector was excluded subsequently from this initiative. So the lending rate, the lowered lending rate would benefit the SME sector and the service industry, not in the industrial projects.
Yes.
So I think providing money at a more cheap or affordable interest rate was actually needed, and this would help this sector to grow.
Yes, sir, how do you see the issue of the tax of the micro and small medium enterprises help in boosting them and immersing them in the whole of the economy of the country?
Historically, tax authorities have been perceived as a giant monster. Arbitrary, much of their actions were arbitrary. I mean, they sometimes discard the records of the business and they start their own calculations based on their own assumptions.
Yeah.
With the new incentives provided by the draft law, I think this picture will slowly vanish, because the new draft law provides a more simple and straightforward way of taxation for the micro businesses and for SMEs based on a flat rate by bands.
Yes. Sir, I have a question here in this regard. the underground economy, as you termed it, many women venture into this business, establishing their own micro enterprises, their own micro business. But many of these women are uneducated and they actually don't know what to do. They have an idea of establishing their business, but they don't know how to make studies or calculate profits, for example. So how can we help those women be integrated in this type of economy?
The civil society organizations has a big role in this particular issue, in educating not only the women but also the young entrepreneurs on establishing businesses. Not only money is not only the biggest hurdle in microfinance or SME business. It's helping the entrepreneurs to plan for the business, to market their products or services in the right way. So I see that the civil society organization must play a role and pursue their initiatives in educating and helping and providing entrepreneurs with the technical assistance and the training as needed.
And what about the private sector's role in this regard as well? You talked about the role of the civil society. What about the private sector?
The private sector, I would imagine that it would fall under the CSR, their CSR policy or initiatives of the social responsibility.
Yes.
So part of the social responsibility is to build in their business model any initiative that would help the entrepreneurs and young women or the women in this micro business to establish their own business and to market their products and plan for expansion and so on.
Sir, how is the government actually, from your point of view, is preparing to abolish the paperwork and the red tape and to transfer the system into a digital one ahead of the transfer of the government to the new administrative capital by the year 2020?
The digitalization of services is a dream. And I think the dream is beginning to become true. The government has already started with several initiatives to digitalize its services, and by the end, I would imagine by the end of another 3 to 5 years, we will witness that several of the basic services offered by the government, by that time it will have been digitalized. Digitalizing the services offered by the government is not only in terms of payment of the government dues, but also avoiding or eliminating, I would say, eliminating the exchange of papers. So at the end of the day, we will have a paperless channel of delivering the service. It's more convenient for the citizen. It's more time. It will save much time of the citizen instead of going to physically visiting the venue of or the outlet of delivering the service. This will all have to be completed through the internet or through specialized centers for offering these services.
That's for investors?
Not only investors, for any average person.
So what about investors? How would that help attract more investments to the country?
As you may agree that investors, whether a local investor or a foreign investor, would seek to do business in a convenient infrastructure for getting the services done.
Of course.
By improving the infrastructure needed for the investors, whether local or foreign investors, this would eventually help them or encourage them to do business. And there is an index for ease of doing business. And Egypt has, last year, if my memory serves me right, has achieved a more advanced stage in that index. So investors would seek doing business in a country where doing business is more convenient and less hectic.
Yes, indeed. So, what about the role here of the digitalization in boosting the entrepreneurs?
Entrepreneurs, they would aspire to do business in a convenient way. They don't have the time or to visit government offices to finish the endless bureaucratic and red tape procedures. So the more digitalization in offering the services, the more encouragement for entrepreneur business in a convenient way.
Yes. What about the issue of government measures and red tape? How can we take steps to overcome this issue?
Simplifying the procedures, automation, more digitalization of services, all these are the right steps to overcome the red tapes.
Yes, sir. To what extent actually can the ability of the micro and small and medium enterprises help in receiving the needed financing and boosting the financial technology that would help to plan the state for the real digital transformation which is taking place?
If we speak about the financial technology, who is offering the financial technology? It's the SME,
Yep.
the business in IT, the businesses or these entities in the SME sectors that are specialized in providing more advanced and more financial technology products to the community. So if we boost these companies who are offering the fintech, this would be helpful for all business communities or participants in the business community.
Yes. Sir, the SMEs are also said to be responsible for driving innovation and competition in many economic sectors. Although they create more jobs, there is also a majority of job contraction. How do you see that?
Job contractions, sometimes the technology, as a result of using technology, the number of regular jobs diminish. I mean, we will not have these jobs with the use of technology. So there is always a threat that, or a criticism, if I may call it, that using more technology in business would eliminate regular jobs and increase unemployment.
But that's not the case in business only. It's the case of all jobs.
Yes, indeed.
All sectors.
Yes, indeed. With the automations, with the fintech, with more advanced technology,
with the big data as well.
Yeah, many of the regular jobs will disappear in future. So it's part of the government strategy is the transformation of, or the retraining of the job holders of regular jobs to make them move to other jobs. Otherwise, we will have a big problem of unemployment for those who were laid off because of their jobs have disappeared with the use of automation or technology.
Yes. So how can we start to train actually this segment that you are talking about, sir, in order to be ready for the new era of digitalization, if we may call it?
It is not an easy job to do, but there are several factors that determine what type of training that is needed for those who were laid off. It depends on their age group, it depends on their competences. So a thorough analysis of the suitable jobs in the marketplace that can accommodate those people who lost their jobs or were laid off. There should be analysis of how we can retrain them and direct them to the right jobs to accommodate them instead of leaving them unemployed.
Yes. Mr. Hany Abou-El-Fotouh, our economic expert, thank you very much, sir, for being with us this morning.
Thank you, sir, very much. And now, our dear viewers, will go to a short break, and after that, we'll be back to resume the segments of our show for today, so stay tuned.